You can just get a fake one made.
At least they have a choice. Joining us for the newspaper review, Alpesh.B.Patel from Review.with Partners. Great to see you again, Alpesh.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
The day Britain changed, what's your take on it? Do you agree that this is a tectonic shift in just about everything, from welfare to the NHS to the FSA even?
Well, it's a pretty damning headline, and that's really the problem for the government here. They have not managed to stay ahead of the media headline. When you're cutting legal aid, when you're adding what has now been termed bedroom tax, so you can't even keep on top of renaming of taxes, which is pretty devastating impact for the government when the opposition gets to name your new tax. Then the last thing you want to do at that time, when you're announcing those cuts to the people at the bottom of the pyramid, is at the same time to say you're cutting the top rate tax. Now, I don't disagree with a cut at the top rate tax. Problem is, it looks like you're going easy on the rich and harder on the poor. Now, of course, the answer isn't some kind of Cypriot sequestration of the rich people's money and just moving it across to the poor, because the fact of the matter is those at the bottom of the pyramid just cannot be supported alone by the very wealthy. It's just that in media terms, this is incredibly damning, and they've just simply not managed to stay ahead of the media headlines.
But when you look at the substance of it, something, for example, like the welfare benefit cap, surely most people in this country think that there's been a long overdue need for welfare reform, and this perhaps provides an answer.
And it gets reformed every single parliament, and they have changes and tinkering and all the rest of it. So I think the day Britain changed is a little bit dramatic for The Guardian to say that. And also, if you look at overall spending, despite these changes, and the idea behind the changes is to make the benefit spending more efficient. It goes to the people who are the most in need, but overall spending hasn't been, unfortunately for the government, hasn't actually been cut. Or if they spin it the other way, is to say, well, actually, we're not just simply taking money out of those who can least afford to live without it. But the idea is it's supposed to be more efficient. The idea is it's supposed to also make you more incentivized to work if you can, but actually removing money in this way, it tends to be quite scattergun, and you can always find stories of people who it was not intended to harm, and that's when, again, I say the press can make wonderfully damning headlines like this, and you do not do this kind of announcement at the same time you cut top rate tax.
Right, but it's certainly an eye-catching announcement. Cumna's got the Greek version of this story. I have the translation, and it's the translation provided by the Guardian as well. And it's Cyprus's take on its banking crisis. OK, so we're shifting money around, but let's open up a few casinos and overturn the laws here. We'll all start gambling in Cyprus.
You know, if you think of a country like a company, and if your company got this much publicity, there's probably two things you want to do. First of all, you want to invite consumers, which is you really want to start promoting your tourism and saying, look, just how wonderfully sunny it is, unlike the rest of Europe.
Especially at the moment.
And probably forever, actually, at the moment, the way it feels, the endless winters we have in the rest of Europe. So that's the consumer and that's tourism. And the second thing is business. And you know, if you go to somewhere like Monaco, who basically they don't have tax, not because they've got oil revenues or anything, but because they've got casinos. And if that's what it takes to survive, look at Malta, look at Gibraltar.
Do you think that's what they're trying to do here? They're actually trying to position themselves as rivals to the likes of Monte Carlo, Monaco.
I think they've got no choice. I don't think they're necessarily looking at themselves as a rival to Monaco just because you're just not going to replicate the French Riviera. But what you do have is the ability, like with a Malta, subject to EU regulations, or like a Gibraltar, where you get online companies being based out there because of the benefits of having business located there.
But it's not straightforward because the church, the Orthodox Church in Cyprus, has a pretty big stake in the country, obviously as a body that has lost money on these banks, and as a moral source as well, and they're not in favour of this.
Yeah, if you're going to make an announcement like this, again, it goes to the previous story as well, just don't do it over Easter. We're just all feeling a little bit more religious.
Nobody knows how to spin these days, do they?
You'd think the politicians would look at the calendar.
You know, a country facing economic hardship, well, here's the solution. You all go out and gamble.
Yeah, gamble, yes.
Okay, let's move on to Paulo Di Canio. And it is one of the stories, of course, we're covering as well. Should a footballer's political beliefs determine whether or not he's qualified for the job? Could you drill it down to that?
Well, yeah, because football just doesn't have enough fascists in it. I think David Miliband was absolutely wrong to resign. And the reason is because if he'd remained a director, he could at least have explained to the new manager of Sunderland, who is, in my view, self-evidently a moron, that fascism has there's three things about fascism you need to know. First of all, it's nationalist. So what the heck are you doing playing being a manager of a team which isn't from your nation? Secondly, Sunderland has a very long tradition of Labour.
These are your views, and we have to make these are your views.
Well, it is a nationalist political tradition, is fascism, and Sunderland has a long Labour tradition, which is as far away you can get from fascism as possible. And thirdly, Britain, so you come to Britain of all places, defeated his fellow Italian fascists in the Second World War. But yes, it is entirely my view that he's a moron, not the BBC's. And probably a few other viewers agree with me.
Okay, well, I suppose you mean attending any of their home games. But let's move on now to the golf.
I think Sunderland are a great team. I think their managers.
Well, they're facing relegation. They have a very serious
and I hope they don't get relegated. I think they're a great
fans
team.
Are very forgiving as well, because if he moves them out of the relegation zone and takes them to a point of safety, the fans will be, well, okay, we may not like the fascist link, but he does the job.
Yeah, you might get a new political party.
One thing that is.
I think the people of Sunderland are more intelligent than voting for a manager with those kind of political.
Let's talk about freedom in Egypt. The crackdown, as the Gulf News describes it, as the satirist Bassam Youssouf, some are calling the equivalent of Jon Stewart in Egypt, facing a number of legal challenges because of his openness, if you like.
You know, I think the problem with the Arab Revolution is now we're wondering whether it's actually just a change of political parties as opposed to a change in the political system. If it was a change in the political system where many of us thought that we were seeing liberal democracies, or at least some form of democracy with respect for human rights, freedom of speech and such like, then it wouldn't be a problem. But it's now increasingly starting to look like just simply political parties have changed, which isn't sufficient enough a change. And if you wanted to look at, say, I was looking at the Arab Democracy Index, you want to model yourself on a country like Jordan, which ranks at the top of that, as opposed to what we're seeing at the moment, which you rightly point out, doesn't have the kinds of human rights protections that a lot of the people who are increasingly becoming disenchanted were expecting. Their expectations were raised, because I think it is a switch in political parties and not in political system, and that requires a more substantive constitutional reform and how to execute a constitution into a living document.
OK, time's very, very tight, but VAT is 40 years old.
It is, and well, you know, income tax from 1799 to pay for the Napoleonic Wars was a temporary measure as well. VAT, what we need to, and going back right to the first story, is VAT on products sold in places like Harrods or anything sold in Mayfair should be 40% and go up by 1% for every year VAT exists. That's how you actually tax the rich to pay for the rest of us.
I suspect you would know. Alpesh.B.Patel, Review.with Alpesh.B.Patel, thanks very much. It's great having you on the program. And that's all we have for the newspaper review from Juliet and from me as well.
Bye-bye.